This is Mark L. White with Health Hacks, and today we have Dr. Bruce Rippee with us all the way from Kansas City, Missouri. How are you, Dr. Rippee?
I'm great. I'm glad to be here.
So happy to have you on the show. And I know you've been a chiropractor now for almost 30 years. You have a successful integrative practice in Kansas City?
Several, yes. Yeah, we've been very happy, very fortunate. Yeah, very blessed to be here.
Great. So I always admire chiropractors when they expand, open up other other types of businesses. Tell me what you're doing out there.
Well, we started doing consulting about 4 years ago. We joined a mastermind group. We outran them a little bit quickly. So then we started doing it for our own clinics. You know that, Mark, as well as anybody. But we started doing it for our own clinics. And then we realized that there was a lot of, I don't know even what to call it, wild west out there, in these, especially in these regenerative clinics and so forth. And as we started to develop our own processes, we realized nobody had checklists, so we made some. Nobody had procedures and policies and protocols. And one of the greatest things I got to do is I've been lecturing, and of course, you know me, but I started to lecture around, and I was lecturing to medical clinics about business. And that was a very interesting thing because we have these great products. I mean, truly, we have these great products that exist out there. And yet nobody knew how to combine them, or if they did know how to combine them, they were very quiet. They weren't telling everybody else. So I was looking to legitimize, standardize, and then elevate the entire industry.
Awesome. Now, when you talk about these procedures that you've helped process, what exactly are these procedures?
Well, anytime you use something like an ESWT, anytime you use like a shock wave or a sound wave or any of those products, like a Gainswave product, or you use regenerative medicine, or you use a combination of those things, adding in PRP or anything, exosome, stem cell, all of that stuff. There are ways that you can do it. There are ways that you can't do it. And people who got the best results were the ones that did some kind of combination, right? Unfortunately, there were people out there with billboards that said after it was not okay to say certain things in their marketing and advertising, they were saying things in their marketing and advertising. Of course, they get bad letters and they have to stop, and here comes the OIG to their office. So the point was to get to where everybody was doing it safely. The patient was still taken care of because, as you know, and we all know, but our goal is to get people to heal and grow. That's our entire goal here. So I wanted to keep people safe. So we started to develop these other processes. I call it the 4 Ps: policies, procedures, protocols, and pricing. And that way you kind of legitimize and standardize the industry.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the wild west, and I'm sure you're referring to our favorite government bureau, the FDA, with these letters. And we've seen some crazy stuff over the last 5 to 10 years when it comes to regenerative therapies. What do you think is going on? Do you think it's the people making the therapies, or do you think it's the actual doctors who are implementing this and treating the patients? Like, where do we have the
that's actually a great question, just to be honest, because it's so many layers to it, right? I mean, you know as well as everybody that the FDA likes it. They like this stuff. They have all along. Scott Gottlieb, when he was commissioner of the FDA, he put in the NEST program for real world evidence, real world data on purpose. He wrote letters that says we see everything from the CART, CAR-T stuff, to gene therapy, to regenerative medicine with your exosomes and stem cells. He said that is the future. That's what's going to happen. He was trying to expedite and accelerate a lot of what was already being done that they knew worked. And so the FDA likes it. It's really difficult. People will have the tendency to, when somebody says the FDA, everybody looks around, and make sure that they're not offending somebody or whatever. That's not the goal of the CBER or the FDA. What they wanted to do was to stop people saying, hey, we can cure fallen hair to fallen arches, when in all honesty, that simply wasn't true. So that's one layer of it. Is that a good layer to talk about?
Well, I think it comes down to marketing, and we've heard for almost 2 decades now about stem cell therapy. And at first it was tied into fetuses, and then we're talking about amnio fluid, and we're talking about umbilical cord fluid. And sometimes doctors don't know what they're actually getting.
True.
So
That's a beautiful point. One of the most intelligent things that we can look at is the lab FDA inspected? Are they a producer or a white labeler? I tell all of my clinics that when I do consulting, I say the first thing you want to look at is your lab FDA inspected, wherever you're buying your product, right? We've seen lots of labs go away because even those that were FDA inspected, there were other problems that came up. And actually, it's because they honestly thumbed their nose at the FDA, which you just can't do. The next one is, do they have an IND in place, several INDs in place? Are they working with an IRB, which is obviously that's going to be your industrial review board, which basically is research. Are they looking at stuff like that? Because the FDA takes all of that. Are you playing with me nicely? If you're not, they're going to go after the lab. That's the easiest way to do it. They're not going to go after the clinic that might be doing it wrong. They simply don't have the resources. They don't want to do that anyway.
Yeah,
But
plus
they're going to go
sometimes,
after and knock down the lab.
plus sometimes I think the doctors are a victim of whoever's selling the product saying the wrong things.
Absolutely. And I would say that happens. I'm the guy they call when somebody gets a letter. Okay. I've been working with compliance for a long time. So somebody gets a letter and they heard through the referral networks, you got to call Rippee, and I will take, and then I tell them, okay, here's what you have to do next. If it's a warning letter, and there's levels of that letter. I mean, I'm not telling you anything. Hopefully the listeners understand that you're going to have different levels of a letter, right? Something's going to be a basically just a generic, hey, we didn't like the way you said stem cell in this marketing material. Or it's going to be a warning letter directly to the CEO or owner of the business, or it's going to be a cease and desist, and the OIG will come in. We've worked with clinics with that will come in and come talk to you. And they're going to tell you to stop doing what you're doing.
Now, getting back to like the patient's viewpoint, what does a patient look for? If I'm trying to find out what kind of practice I should go to, when should I run and say, this isn't the practice for me? And when should I say this is okay?
The one size fits all, everybody gets that injection is not a good clinic to go to. The stab and stop. I don't like these at all. There's a bunch of them that popped up. By the way, they've all been hit with letters, and so they're out of Kansas City right now, but they may still be in your market. I don't know. But the stab and stop, what are you going to do? You're going to come in, you're going to get, someone's going to look you over, and you're going to get this injection. Good luck. I hope that worked. That is a terrible model. It doesn't work like that. There are real things that patients have to do themselves. There is accountability. I say it this way, and I love talking with you, but I don't want to say too much, but I say it this way. If you come in and you get a $5,000 treatment, let's say, okay, whatever it is, it's a combination of treatments, you get $5,000, whatever it is, treatment schedule. You leave my office and you go buy 50-cent corn dogs. You just spent $5,000.50 on a corn dog. Because the nurture port, we can change stuff. There's amazing new technology to put in Mrs. Jones. That's every patient, right? We can change Mrs. Jones's world, transformative. If, however, the nurture is also there. So the environment in which you create new cells, the environment in which you have a good, healthy outcome is going to be the environment that you grow or don't grow let's just say you're going to get a different key result.
Should patients be asking doctors, what are you injecting in the body? And we know like the FDA frowns on getting it from a lab versus you getting stem cells from your own body. Where do you stand on that?
So I don't think the FDA actually frowns on that at all. I think what they want is more information. The FDA is a very bright organization. It really is. That's not just pandering to them. They're very smart. They have smart people involved. And the people that I have gotten to talk to, including the Scott Gottliebs of the world and so forth that have been commissioners, they're not as worried. They want it to be safe. Number one, safe. It needs to be safe, right? So some of the stuff that we're using have 50,000 doses with no adverse events ever reported. So it's like, okay, well, then that's going to be relatively safe. That's something that I think patients should be asking more. I really do. I think they should be asking that. Hey, have there been any adverse events? What's gone on with that? If the answer is there have been no more adverse events with this than there has been with a steroid injection, except the steroid injection perhaps causes collagen 10, creates a fatty cartilage, and you wind up destroying your own knee or whatever, right? You get that this is safe. Then, of course, they look at effective. That's the next piece that they're going to look at.
I think also you brought this up earlier about the claims doctors are making or practices are making on what it's treating. what do you see as the most effective thing that we're treating, and what claims are just not real?
So far, hair we can't regrow yet. I'm just going to be honest. You know, you hear people say it works sometimes, you know, it's going to need some other help. It's going to need maybe acoustic wave or shock wave. It's going to need all kinds of stuff. But to be very honest, we are struggling with hair. Can we help regrow cartilage? Yes, that's been proven over and over. You'll have the white papers to prove that. But the other piece to that too is, and you should know those white papers. Every clinic that hears this and all that, you should already have that available so that you can prove if somebody comes in. It comes down to a reasonable access to those documents if you want to show it to your patients. So I would say terrific results in increasing blood flow, decreasing inflammation. Everything out there that you hear decreasing inflammation usually means a better, more viable organism. So the person's going to be better if you decrease their inflammatory cascades, right? So those are what I would look for if you're having osteoarthritis. It's the conditions, but when you start combining, hey, we use this to cure or treat this, the FDA is going to throw up a red flag. What you do is you say either these are the conditions that we're looking at, there are some new and emerging technologies for that, or you say we use stem cells, exosomes to assist us in our treatments. But you can't say the same, you can't say what you use to treat it and what you're treating in the same sentence.
Yeah,
or in the same advertisement.
And I agree. I think where you're getting at, it's important that the patient come in and meet the doctor, they discuss what's going on, and then the doctor doesn't have a one-size-fits-all treatment. He really focuses more on the wellness aspects of this.
Well, what's your goal, Mark? I mean, obviously you're a really healthy, good guy, but if you weren't, you know, what's your goal? Well, I want to be able to, let's say in your case, you're a scuba diver. That's a very different outcome than a grandpa that wants to lift their grandkids and walk along the beach, right? So it should be completely goal oriented for every single patient. That's why you can't have the one size fits all.
So my wife tore her meniscus, her hip. And they
It would be a labrum in a hip.
I'm sorry.
Meniscus is in a knee.
I'm sorry, her labrum. She tore her labrum.
Sure, yeah.
And they wanted to operate on her. So she had stem cells and exosomes injected into her labrum, and it fixed everything.
Not that common.
But when we talked to the doctor, they didn't say this is a cure, this fixes it. They gave us the risks. They said this may not work.
Correct.
And they were very upfront about that.
Correct. We teach all of our clinics that the patient came to you asking you for something. So, and that's how it has to be. So if the patient comes to you and says, hey, can you help me with, I have a situation, what do you think? And then the doctor conscientiously looks through all of the possibilities and says, hey, you know what, Mrs. Jones, you have the right to do nothing. Okay, you have the right to do this on the medical side. Here's your risks and results, usually, historically. You have the right to try a new and emerging technology. If you're doing that, you're doing the right way to practice medicine. If you're out there trying to throw a big net to draw people into your office just so you can give them some cash service, I believe you're actually making a mistake, and you're certainly exposing yourself to some kind of litigation.
So you think that, you know, the FDA, they came out with that statement a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Where they're cracking down on the clinics that are coming out with this, saying you really can't use this for anything unless it's, was it the 610 or is it the regulation? So
if you're talking about a 361 and 351, yeah. So a 351 is a drug. A 361 is a non-drug. And you do have people. So here's the cool thing about that. There are labs that have never purported this to be a 351. It never will be. It's a 361. It's a joint supplement. It happens to contain stem cells. It happens to contain that entire milieu that decreases inflammatory cascades and may regenerate something. The same, then you are actually in a very safe market. If you are also explaining to Mrs. Jones that whatever their patient's name is, you're explaining to them that we have these emerging technologies that might also be useful for you. However, we want you to go look this up. Here's some websites, here's some white papers, and you give them, we do everything that we do. We give them all of the information. They say, this is your decision. there's nothing that stops you from saying, hey, I have a right to try this, or I get my shoulder cut out and replaced with an appliance, right? You have the right to look at that, and that's what we do. I think then you're in a really safe area. You can speak. You have to ask, you have to say all the right things that it sounds as though, and it is as though that patient came to you asking you for answers.
Now, I've talked to some doctors and some companies that make the exosomes that they feel the FDA is bringing us down a path where this is going to become a drug and going to be controlled by big pharmacy, which we've seen in the past. Are these guys conspiracy? Are these guys believing in crazy stuff? Or what do you think about that?
Mark, I don't know. I think some just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they aren't really out to get you. Certainly, historically, we've seen America do that. We've seen it happen all over, honestly, all over the world. Will that happen? Yes. I believe very strongly that big pharma will eventually do that. You have to understand, Google put in $800 million recently into research and development. Bayer, Monsanto did exactly the same thing. Fuji Medical put that $21 million lab in Wisconsin recently too. I mean, that's just a couple of years old. So it isn't that we know that big pharma is going to push toward this. The Harvard Stem Cell Institute, love those guys, by the way, very intelligent people. They put $2 billion into R&D just last quarter. So you can't tell me that big pharma is not coming, because they are. However, the problem is and I think that good drugs are going to be made. I really do, Mark. I think this is a smart idea. Good drugs are going to be made from that. But how do we help the people today, right, while the next 10 years happen and those good drugs come out?
I always see a trend where doctors, cutting edge doctors and practices like yourself, always come out with stuff that by nature is cutting edge. They review the white papers. They actually do the work that big pharma doesn't want to do, because we don't know if there's market acceptance yet. Once we see that this stuff works, and once we see great results, then you see the FDA and you see all the regulations come in. What else is coming down the pike? What other cutting edge treatments are out there that people should be aware of?
All right, that's my most exciting portion of this. And right now, I would say first, you're going to see combinations. You're going to see people who use, as in your wife's case, stem cells and exosomes together.
Right.
You're going to see sound wave and shockwave therapy and exosomes and stem cells together. You're going to see rehab specialists like we have a virtual rehab program people can literally just hire into, right? So we have the ability to add a bunch of ancillary, if you want to call that, or at least great products and great services together first. That's what's going to happen first. Okay, so you're going to hear you do this, 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 and this. So for example, you might get a Myers cocktail plus something that you're very deficient in. You might get exosomes. You might get another Myers cocktail. You might get PRP with that. That's going to happen first. Then you're going to start to see people upregulate and downregulate certain proteins. For example, we know cell death is one of the worst things that can happen to you. Cytochrome C caspase. If you start getting that, you go to the apoptosis, the entire world goes into some kind of ionic atmosphere that doesn't work. Mitochondria pumps out the wrong stuff and the whole cell goes boom. And it does that over and over and over. You get this chain reaction. You lose enough cells, you don't have enough cartilage, right? Or you don't have enough of that muscle or whatever it is, okay? So that's one of the things that they're looking at right now. So they're upregulating and downregulating proteins on the outside of these incredibly small nanoparticles. They're doing that in order to be able to specifically ask the body to not go from some macrophage, whatever it is, some macrophage thing, and into the next confluence of that macrophage. They want to actually change how that works. So you're not going to get this coagulation effect. You're going to get something else. So right now, you're seeing it happen where, Yamanaka 2012 makes a fat cell into a muscle cell, right? Now you're seeing it's possible to take that fat cell, turn it into a type of cell that produces a very specific type of collagen, which is what you wanted, or cartilage or whatever. So in just 9 years, we've made these huge leaps forward. And we're continuing to leap forward with that. You will see, I promise you, you will see exosomes that deliver drugs to very specific areas that are hard to deliver drugs to. Pardon the terrible sentence, but you get what I mean.
No, I don't even know how to touch it because we're in such a politically charged environment right now. But integrative doctors using all their arsenal of tools to treat COVID. And some of them feel like they're being silenced. They can't talk about these things because they're worried about the FDA, vaccinations. But do you see these integrative treatments used as a treatment for long haul COVID?
Oh yeah, it's happening right now. That's already underway. I know there's at least 8 INDs from different companies where they're already doing that. We do not treat that because we're not a family practice. We have other things that we do, right? But you're seeing it already. I know of at least 8. There's probably more independent new drugs that are being developed simply because you know this already, but simply because when you inject this into an area, you decrease the inflammatory cascade and you change the cytokine storm, which is what kills us. It's not the fall that kills you, it's the sudden stop, right? It's cement poisoning. So if you can stop that cytokine storm from occurring, which they're very sure that a lot of this stuff does, and you're already seeing it. You have INDs that are already approved for that application.
Yeah, and I think integrative doctors, you see a lot more using IVs to do like generalized therapies with exosomes. I know the FDA frowns upon that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on just wellness, using that for wellness?
So I'm not a big fan of posting that anywhere. I'm not a big fan of marketing that anywhere. I'm not a big fan of even advising that without the patient understanding, hey, listen, I have been given all of the appropriate choices. I've been told all the medical data. I've been shown everything, and I want this. But if you get to that stage where your patient is allowed to try something like that, and that's what they want, it has been proven in empirical data, not in any way that you could give it to the CDC, FDA, or so forth. It's been proven in empirical data to be effective as a part of a treatment. I would still very much, people, they get mad at me, but you have to understand over 80% of the people that have died from COVID were obese. Right. So there's something that needs to be addressed on that side too, right? You lower the possibility of you dying from COVID to 20% if you just simply aren't obese. Well, that's not a popular view. And the reason why, honestly, is because, well, that means I need to do something. I can't just go get a stab. I can't just go get a thing. I can't do that. So we're going to talk about integrative doctors, which I love. If we talk about medical doctors that are integrating things in the practice, which I work with those every day, chiropractors that integrate, all of that, what you're seeing is those people saying, okay, we're going to do something for you, Mrs. Jones, but here's your job, right? And that's the biggest part of what's missing, honestly, in healthcare entirely, if I'm allowed to say that, in medicine entirely.
Yeah, everybody's searching for that magic bullet. Everybody wants the magic pill that'll reduce obesity, and people don't do their part. I agree with that.
Yeah, and the problem is we already know, and there's great data out there, people can look it up, but a person who is obese already has an increase in cytokines. They already have a change in their inflammatory cascades. Their enzymes and hormones are different than a person who is not obese. So when you get into a level of unhealth or dis-ease, you can then fall into whatever it is where you get all of the leaking and there's too much fluid. If you can survive that, you may also have what you called long haul, right? Where I'm still not okay 2 months later. Well, in that case, your integrative doctors and your medical doctors are saying, all right, it's time for you to start eating green leafy stuff. You're going to start, and we do it all on STEM, STEM. So it's how you sleep, think, eat, and move. And we have processes that we do for every single one of those. If I'm going to sit on the couch and wait for my vaccine to fix me, you're very likely to not be one of those people that does as well as a person who says, I'm going to get up and move some every day. I'm going to drink water every day. Have you ever heard this? I mean, you're a really smart guy. Have you ever heard people tell you, oh man, I would say, well, you need to drink more water. You're dehydrated. Oh man, I hate water. Have you heard that?
I think that's crazy how people don't they just don't take ownership. Patients have to take ownership.
They do. We can add something awesome in. We can add technologies in. It's one of the great parts of health hacks. We can add great technology into someone's life. but there really is a part that they have to do. And so we make them, we stand right across from them. We're not militant, but we stand right across from them. They said, you realize you have a job here. If you'll do your job with us, we have a great chance at success. But that's why you asked me earlier, one of the things, the clinics I don't like at all are the stab and stop. What are you going to do? Well, I'm going to have you come in, we're going to poke this into your knee or whatever, we're going to give you an infusion, and you're going to be all better. That's just a lie. That doesn't work that way.
I think what you're doing, bringing standardization into the integrative wellness field, is amazing. First of all, how many doctors or practices do you work with nationwide?
So right now we have, the wonderful thing is that it's growing all the time. Right now we have 6 that we are working with directly. We only take a few on at a time because we're very careful with what we do. The but there is, and I just have to be straightforward with you, the but there is, we had the opportunity to work with 250 while we were in that mastermind group. And we worked with them until we started to bring them up. And then we moved ourselves away from the mastermind group because, as I said before, some parts of the wild, wild west were going the wrong direction from what I was saying. They were selling things and saying things that I simply wouldn't do. And I hate to tell you this, but the truth is that company is no longer around. They had to come, they're being sued right now. And in their entire process is now in a big lawsuit. So like I said, we just started jumping in on our own right now. The good news is we have access to people like you that if people want to know more information from us and so forth. And I work directly with labs. I get to consult with the labs themselves and I tell them, guys, this is what your doctors want. And we also set up symposia at the labs so the medical doctors and the chiropractors and everybody can come down to those labs and see federally inspected, have their own IND applications, do all of that research.
Are the 6 practices you work with in Missouri, or are they spread out?
They're spread out all over, and it seems to be growing all the time. You know, we just, it's either going to be this Friday or Monday where we've got a guy that has 4 practices and they're already doing okay, but they're in trouble. He got a letter, you know, so I deal with the practices that get letters.
Mm-hmm. That's scary to get a letter. So if a doctor gets a letter, how does he get in touch with you?
info@jabmedical.org.
Jab, J-A-B?
J-A-B, jabmedical.org. The ones that want to make sure that they're compliant, we go through every piece of their website. We go through all, and that's what we do. I mean, you know, they're doing the right thing though. The problem is there's so many people out there that are already doing the right thing for their patients, but they are at extreme risk simply because they have this word or that word, or they didn't even remember that they had this picture of a guy or well, but that guy said his own testimonial, so it should be okay. It's not. You're going to get a letter, you know, that type of thing. So yeah, that's what we work with right now. Right now, we're just working with those. Of course, I have my own, but we're working with outside of our own 4 walls. And our job is to, like I said, legitimize, standardize, and then elevate the entire industry.
I love it. Thank you so much for what you do. And we'll have in the show notes links to your website. If you're a patient looking for Dr. Rippee, it's Bridge Integrative Medical, correct?
Bridge Integrative Medicine. Absolutely. Yeah. Here in Kansas City, we're right in the middle of the country, which there's a lot of people that actually come and do the medical tourism. They get to come in and see what Kansas City is all about. There's usually good steak, but I'm going to tell you, eat vegetables too.
Yeah. Well, they come in, get a good steak, go see a Chiefs game, and come and see you. Thank you so much, Doctor. I really appreciate everything.
Thank you. Really appreciate you, Mark.
Take care.